Hello, hello. Welcome to the 2022 SGDA Summit. My name is Aaron Cendan, and I will be doing a quick little intro to the wonderful world of Reaper scripting. So for those that don't know, Reaper is a digital audio workstation like Logic Pro or Pro Tools or Ableton, and the benefit to using Reaper for game audio is that it allows you to write scripts for it. You can write scripts in Python, Lua, or a custom language called EEL. But for the most part, scripts for Reaper are written in the language Lua. So today, I'm going to chat a little bit about why you might be interested in learning Reaper scripting, how you might go about getting started with a simple Reaper script, and then what's next if you want to pursue actually learning how to write formal Reaper scripts on your own. So, without further ado, why would you want to learn Reaper scripting? Well, for one, the basics of Reaper scripts can be immediately useful in day-to-day game audio workflows in particular. So sound designers, composers, dialogue editors, Foley artists, and field recorders that use Reaper can all dramatically improve their workflows by understanding how basic scripts work. For one, modern games have a ton of content. So having a scripting language really gives you the ability to quickly process large batches of assets at any given time. It can cut out hundreds of tedious development hours over the course of a project, and as people with experience scripting in other languages like Blueprint or C# for the Unity devs out there, having a scripting language at your disposal to make batch processing workflows faster is really clutch. So where would you want to start if you wanted to write some scripts for Reaper to improve your game audio workflows? Well, if you don't have Reaper installed, you should probably go ahead and do that. Afterwards, you can start writing Reaper scripts using Lua. So Lua is a lightweight cross-platform programming language that is compiled in C and has been around for nearly 30 years. It is a great first language to learn if you've never learned a text-based programming language and you're more familiar with something like Blueprint. And it's got pretty user-friendly concepts that are easy to digest and understand. It's got dynamic typing, which means that you don't need to worry about prefixing all of your variables with int and string and all this stuff, because Lua just handles all the complicated matters automatically. So in Reaper, to start a new Reaper script, you would need to go to the actions list, which is available with the question mark hotkey. And in the bottom left of the actions list, you will need to click New Action and New Reaper Script, or New Reascript. And then it'll pop open a little folder selection dialog. You'll just want to place those scripts in your scripts folder of your Reaper directory. That way, when you ever move your Reaper configuration to a new computer, all of your scripts will come with your config. And then the next important matter is the Reaper Script API. So if you don't know, an API stands for Application Programming Interface. And in this case, for our application Reaper, it's what allows us to write functions that interface natively with the way Reaper works. And to see what sort of functions you have available to work with Reaper, you click the little API help button in the upper right corner of the window, and it will pop open a big window with all of your Reaper script info. For example, if I share screen, it will open this lovely looking window that has all of the functions available inside of Reaper. And you can see we have functions for like getting the active media item or getting the selected regions, working with MIDI information, lots of fun stuff in there. We'll go back to the presentation. So let's write our first Reaper script. In all scripting languages, the first thing you write is hello world, so we're going to do the same thing. The Reaper show console message command is what allows us to print a message to the console. And if you type in reaper.show console message and insert a string of your choice, then it will pop open the little message box where you can send yourself information. Now, the Reaper script programming interface, the IDE, does not allow for something like a breakpoint. So you can't stop code execution in the middle of a script. However, what you can do is set up show console message command so you can see what a variable is at any given time, or use the variable watch window. It's a little bit archaic for those that are used to more modern programming languages, but it gets the job done. So let's write something a little bit more useful. The most important sort of API commands are going to be those for getting media items in a given project and getting regions and getting all the things you would use for rendering content or for renaming content for your projects naming conventions. So what we're going to start with is getting the media item. The easiest way to do this is by using the Reascript API function getMediaItem, which takes two input parameters. The first one is our current Reaper project, and you can use 0 to get the active project. And the second parameter is going to be the item index for the item that we want. If you use 0 here, it will also get the first item in the project. So by doing reaper.getMediaItem00, we're getting the first media item in this project and assigning it to the variable item. The next line of code here is called GetActiveTake. And because items can have multiple takes in them, we need to tell Reaper which one we want. And GetActiveTake is by far the most common one used because it will just grab the selected take. And to simply use it, you just do GetActiveTake and then the item variable that we already got, and it will return our take. And from there, if we wanted to get the name of our item, we would use the Reaper function reaper.getSetMediaItemTakeInfoString. That's a lot of words, but what it means is we are going to get some information from our item in the form of a string, which is a text variable. And from this line of code, we're returning a underscore followed by a comma and then our take name. This underscore followed by a comma is because Lua allows us to return multiple values from a function. And in this case, we can safely ignore the first value, which Lua does by using an underscore in place of the variable name. This value, or the first one, is telling us whether the function was successful, but we don't really need that at the moment. So by putting an underscore, we can safely ignore it and just get the name of our take. Finally, you can use the Reaper show console message command we showed in the last slide to print the take name. And as you can see in the image, that we have now run our script and gotten the name of the item inside of our project returned out to the console. Hopefully that all made sense. So getting one item is cool, but we often want to process batches of content, for example, all of the items in our project. For that, we can use a for loop. So if you're not familiar with a for loop, it basically runs through the content that's inside of the code block and then loops back to the beginning of the block until the condition is no longer met. So our condition in this case is saying that for I equals 0, so the first index of an item in our project, up until the total number of items in our project minus 1, because we're starting at 0, we want to do the exact same thing. The rest of the code inside of this little screen is pretty much the exact same copy pasted over. The only major change is that inside of getMediaItem, instead of using 0, 0, we're now using 0, I, where I in this case is now the index from our for loop. And because of that, every time we loop through this, we will grab the next index of an item in our project. And you can see in the window on the bottom right that we have 4 items in our project, and all of them are named well-named media item. They all have the exact same name, and it prints 4 times in a row because that's what this project looks like. So now for some actually useful stuff. Let's go ahead and rename the media items in our project. So the ... dots on this slide are basically saying we're going to be copying the exact same code from the previous slide with our for loop, and then replacing the middle 2 lines with a setter on top of the current getter function. So you can see we've kept the getter, which means that we are getting the name of the item in our project by using false at the end of the arguments list. Once we have the take name, we're then going to append I to it. So you can see on line 7.5 of this slide that we have take name ... empty quotes ... I. What that means is it's appending I to our existing take name. The dot dot in Lua is a simple way of writing a string concatenation, and by concatenating our take name with an empty space and then our current item index in the for loop, we can then set the final parameter to true to set the new item name. And if we go ahead and run this script now, you can see in the bottom right window, we have our well-named media items that are now followed up by their index I. So well-named media item 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this may not seem like a particularly complicated use case, but in a large game project, that it's really common to need to change or batch edit multiple file names at any given time, or use a find and replace to adhere to your given project's naming conventions. So this is what our final Reaper script looks like. You can see we start off with the for loop, we iterate through all the selected or all of the media items in the project, we grab them using the item index, we get the active take of that item, we use getSetMediaItem to get the name, we use false as the last parameter so that it's just a getter, it doesn't actually set the item, and then we use it again by appending the item index to set the item name again. And then we use the show console message just to print it. So what might you do from here if you wanted to actually use this script in a day-to-day Reaper workflow? Why would something like this be useful? Well, I will leave that up to you. If you are interested, writing a find and replace tool is one of the most useful things you can really have in terms of like a day-to-day Reaper workflow, as is the case with every other application. I'm sure find and replaces are useful in Word documents and Maya and Excel and whatever, you name it, everything needs a find and replace tool. So if you are interested, after this, you can go ahead and write one by using reaper.getUserInputs to fetch the inputs for a user's find and replace targets. You can use the Lua function string.gsub to substitute the find parts of a given item's name with the replace parts. And then optionally, if you wanted to add the ability to process only the selected items instead of all the items in your project, then I encourage you to look into how you might go about doing that. If you end up writing this and want to show me or get a little code review, I am more than happy to do so and tell you what I think does and doesn't make sense. And then if you are still interested in learning more, I recommend checking out the Lua documentation. The official docs are available on lua.org. This PowerPoint will be passed around, and the little images here are hyperlinks if you need. The Reaper documentation and Reaper forums are also useful, as there are tons of beginning questions on how to write Reaper scripts. And then I also recommend checking out some other user scripts on Repack, which is a package manager for Reaper. For example, I have hundreds of scripts on GitHub that you can go ahead and use as reference or copy paste the content from all you want. And then if there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask. Otherwise, yeah, have a lovely day. Enjoy day 2 of SGDA, the final day. And feel free to reach out if you ever need anything.
Hi everybody, sorry, Aaron, for stream chat, if you wanted to pass along any questions for Aaron, this is the Q&A section. He's open for a conversation. Oh, okay. We have a question from Twitch chat. The question being from Hey It's Archer. How often is I believe Reascript used in comparison to something like Wise? So WY.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm not an audio designer.
You're good. You're good. I see the question. So that is a really good question. So audio work happens in 3 main places. You have your digital audio workstation, which is where content is often authored. So like assets are created in a digital audio workstation like Reaper or Ableton. And then from there, we need to get them into the game engine, which is where the second tool comes into play. Those are called audio middleware tools. And Wise and Fmod are both audio middleware tools. So they're what get our content from like being just a loose pile of WAV files into something that we can hook up with our game engine's parameters and runtime switches and states. So Wise and Fmod are both like directly linked with the game engine and create files that our game engine uses at runtime. The third main application is, of course, our game engine. So this is where we handle all of the actual nitty-gritty implementation. But Wise and Fmod differ from Reaper in that Reaper is largely a content authoring workspace where if you wanted to create audio assets or batch edit a ton of voiceover lines, for example, then you would do all of that content authoring in Reaper, and Reascript would help you write much faster content authoring workflows, where Wise and Fmod are more directly integrated with the way your game engine works for playback at runtime. Good question.
Thank you. Yeah, any other questions from the stream via Twitch chat or Discord? Okay. I think we have another question from Adapari. Does a script use the same export settings and locations as standard exporting? I understand it's naming the files, but from there, do you just use batch export? Is there something else to it?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So you can access the underlying APIs for exporting content in Reaper through Reascript as well. This one, like you said, is just naming files. But for example, if we had a number of items in our project that we wanted to export from a Reascript, then we could go ahead and give these items a fun name and then go ahead and export them by using the native Reaper export commands. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. If we type in render to file, then you'll see we have the native function for rendering right here. And you can even render the project using the most recent render settings, like you mentioned in the chat. If we copy this command ID, then we can access any of the other commands in Reaper by using reaper.main on command, which means if we were to go ahead and run this script, then you'll see it will render our items based on our current render settings in here. So if we set our render settings to selected media items, then we go ahead and save those settings. And whenever we run the Reaper script, it will batch render all of our items according to our workflows. You can see I just rendered those 4 files on my computer that were based on these items because we rendered using the render settings in our project. So because our script didn't really do that already, I didn't have that line included, but this is all you would need to be able to do that.
Sure, thank you. Again, any questions from Twitch chat or Discord? Okay. I think, unfortunately, that comes to our time with Aaron. You will see Aaron later, a little bit later at the audio and sound
in about 12
panel.
minutes.
Yeah, he's kind enough to help with 2 different speaking engagements back to back. So, unfortunately, I think that's our time with Aaron here. We'll see you all in the audio and sound design panel.
Cool. Thanks for having me.